Okay, and so now with our Windows VM set up and tuned, let's continue on with acquiring the files that we'll need for the course, right? All the different course files and resources, challenges, the different lab materials, and so on. And again, just like before, the archive will be referenced alongside this lesson, and so feel free to download it directly in your VM or transfer it from your host into the VM, however you'd prefer to source the files. And so I've loaded the course files onto my system and I just put them in my documents folder. But you can place these wherever you'd like. You can keep them on the desktop or in your documents folder, in the root of your drive, wherever you want really. And to unzip them, we can simply use the standard archive tools that are provided with Windows, right? So for example, we could open this up in File Explorer, right click on the archive and select Extract All. Or we could use PowerShell, right? And so if I open up a PowerShell session here, I can call the expand archive commandlet, again, to inflate that archive and provide the path here in my current directory pointing over to coursefiles.zip. And for the destination path, I can just set it back into my current directory with a /. Excellent. And so once we hop inside, we'll notice a few different directories. Again, we have things like resources for various reference materials or cheat sheets or guides, different example files that we'll be using throughout the course. We have the labs folder here, which holds the password protected lab exercises. And so again, we'll be working through these and unpacking them to practice the various techniques from each lesson. We have the challenge directory, which holds the different challenge exercise files. Again, essentially just additional challenge material that will be added to over time, which you can work through to help reinforce and extend your learning. And finally, we have the install directory, which contains installation scripts and different setup tools that help make getting our environment up and running as quick and straightforward as possible. And so that's where we'll start off with first. And so if we hop into the install directory and then go under to the Windows folder, we're going to find this install.ps1 script. Now, this is a PowerShell install script that's designed to perform a full lab environment setup by sourcing a number of different runtimes and tools and applying different system configurations. It's a bit extensive and aims to get us in a consistent point to really limit the amount of additional things that we'll have to manually source ourselves throughout the course. And so to kick off this installation script, I'm just going to open up a PowerShell session as administrator. Now, it's important that we're in an administrator level PowerShell session or we're going to run into some permission issues. And so once I have that open, I'm just going to navigate to wherever I place the course files and head into that install directory. And from here, I just need to allow script execution in my PowerShell session so I can eventually run that install.ps1 script. And so I can call the set execution policy commandlet here and just set the scope over to my current PowerShell process and just say that I want to set the execution policy to bypass. And then with the force flag there, we can bypass the confirmation prompt. And then I can just run the install script by .sourcing it, right? So /install.ps1 and just hit enter to kick that off. It can take a bit of time to source some of the utilities and binaries here. And so just give it some time and let it do its thing. And as the script installs, we'll notice that several programs and binaries will be added onto our system. For instance, we'll see that we have this sysinternals directory, basically holding all the different sysinternals suite of tools that get dropped into our install folder, which will come in handy throughout the course. Same thing with the Eric Zimmerman toolkit of different Windows-based forensic tools as well. If you run into any issues with the install script, there will also be a separate reference catalog of all the required components so that if you have to, you can go source and install them manually. All right, it looks like that was completed successfully. And so when we get to this point, you'll see that the system needs to restart to complete the changes. And so we'll just give that a second to reboot here. Excellent. And so now that we're back in, I'm just going to hop back into my course files directory and open up a PowerShell window. And from here, we can go ahead and extract the lab files. And so let's hop into the labs directory. If we run a dir here, you'll notice a listing of archives with seemingly random identifiers. And again, that's intentional. It's part of making the course more modular. And so each lab or example or module that we work through is going to be referenced by a unique identifier. And so as you progress, you can easily follow which UID is being referenced or what directory is being used in a particular lesson, right? Or section of the course. And all the relevant files and artifacts for that lab are going to be self-contained within each archive, making it easy to manage and extract and work through without too much overlap or confusion. And all of these archives are going to be password protected, mainly because we don't want Windows Defender kicking in and flagging certain files, even though most of what we're going to be dealing with are post-compromise artifacts or fully defanged samples, right? This isn't a malware analysis course. And so either way, you'll notice that we have a password.txt file here, and this contains the current password that we can use to unzip all of these lab archives. And so you can do that manually if you like. Again, if I open up the File Explorer here and go into this labs directory, I can just right click and click on extract, and it's going to prompt me for the password, right? Or since we've installed the 7-zip utility through our install script, we can run a clever PowerShell one-liner here to extract them all at once using the contents of that password file. Right, so I can run the get child item commandlet here to grab all the different zip files in my current directory. And because we're going to be returning a list of objects, I can pipe that over to 7-zip here to extract the file using the password. Excellent, and there we go. And so this way, all of our labs get extracted automatically without needing to type the password for each one individually. And so that's extracting the lab files. We can also do the same thing if we go back into the challenges directory and run the exact same one-liner. And so now that we have a fresh install configured just the way we like it, this is a perfect time to take a VM snapshot, right? So again, creating a snapshot allows us to save the current state of our VM, right, or our virtual machine, so that if anything goes wrong later, or if we want to maybe restart a lab cleanly, we can quickly revert back to this baseline without having to reinstall or reconfigure everything. Now, there are different ways of doing this depending on the hypervisor software you're using, and so just look up the documentation if you can't find it, but in VirtualBox, it's pretty easy to do, right? We can just select our VM, we can click on the snapshot icon, and then just type in the name of our snapshot. And so again, I like to call it fresh install, so I know what I'm reverting back to if I need to. And that's it. We now have a safe restore point that we can return back to anytime. And now lastly here, as I mentioned earlier, there will be points in the course where it would be beneficial to have multiple Windows VMs on hand, just so you can get practice collecting artifacts remotely between multiple systems. And so if you want to, again, this is completely optional, but when we get to those points, you can follow the same steps that we just did here to spin up a second or a third Windows VM and scale it up as much as you like and follow along that way. But again, just know that you don't have to do that. You can get the same process out of just having a single host as well. All right, and so now we have our Windows-based analyst machine configured and ready to go. Great work.